Hey everyone, my name is Sareth Ney, and during this quarantine time, I decided to do some live stream interviews since I can't go out and be a journalist. Um, this one I'm creating a new one for Friday nights. It used to be I'm taking over my short films that I used to premiere at midnight. This series is called Angkor Baby, and the reason why I called it Angkor Baby is because I'm an Angkor Baby, kind of like Anchor Baby, but my parents they escaped the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia back in the 70s, and I was born here. And Uncle Baby came from I'm a stand-up comic, and it grew from one of the jokes that I came up with to pay homage to my parents, and I took them through like my very before I was born to now in my stand-up routine. Um, but nobody knows. There's Cambodians are like if you're not in Long Beach or Seattle or in Philadelphia or wherever there's like a large Cambodian population, we're just scattered all over the place. And for the longest time growing up, I was like the only Cambodian in my circle of friends. So they were, I was quite foreign to them, and they were quite foreign to me. Nothing like growing up as the only Asian kid from elementary to college. But as I mentioned earlier, Angkor Baby was from a joke that I came up with to pay homage to my family, my roots. Um, and in my story, my stand up called Fresh Off the Boats, based on a true story, it's on YouTube, on my website, on my press kit that's scrolling on the bottom. You'll see the joke performed live. And originally, it was supposed to be the name of my first comedy record that I recorded in Pueblo, Colorado, where I was raised mostly. Um, but I decided there was so many flaws that I decided not to go with that album title, and just to make it, just to have it reincarnated into something else. And I finally found what I was looking for with these live streams every week that I do, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday nights now. Um, but um, Anchor Baby is kind of like a play on words, or um, just joking around with Anchor Baby. And Anchor Baby is uh, when people don't want to go back to their country, they have a baby here. And so I thought, well, Angkor Wat is a temple, the world's largest religious structure. I might as well just talk about Angkor Wat and just make it similar to that. But in no way that disrespected my roots. I just found it clever, and it's my way of paying homage to my roots with Angkor Baby. So with this one, I'm hoping every single week that I would interview a fellow Cambodian, whether they're in the entertainment industry or trying to have like a better tomorrow. Because if you guys don't know, my viewers out there, if you don't know what Cambodia's past was, it was when the Khmer Rouge took over in the 70s, and we all had to be refugees. My family, all our families, pretty much anyone that was lucky to escape, found a new home all over the world, just to find an escape route. And my family ended up um, settling in Colorado, out of all places. And I think my dad kept on telling me how it was like a blizzard when I was born, and it's hard for them to uh, get back home to where they were. But my family pretty much escaped the Khmer Rouge. On my website, you'll read their story. They were teenagers at the time, and they escaped with no shoes on. They had a quarter in their pocket. They escaped through mountains and reaches filled with that were in rivers and landmines and guerrilla armies and so forth. But they were lucky enough to escape to Thailand, and that's where my sister is born. And then they made their way to the Philippines, and then our sponsors are what brought us to America. Um, then, as I mentioned earlier, I was born in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, And then when I was 9, we moved down south to Pueblo, Colorado, which was there was hardly any Cambodians there. Unlike Longmont, Longmont had like a huge population. And I remembered like my parents would play cards there and stuff like that, and it was cool for a while. But it was time to move because my dad had plans on having his own restaurant, and so as he was learning how to cook, we were staying with family, and we ended up staying at their apartments for a little while, and then we finally made our way down to Pueblo. And Pueblo growing up was rough at that time because it was just like there was like a large gang population, and my parents were really worried about me falling into that lifestyle. And so what they did was they put me in school. They put me in karate school, which really didn't do much for me because I'm a writer, not a fighter. And and then I would go to school, do my homework during the week, and if they needed me for the restaurant, I'd be the dishwasher at their Chinese restaurant. And that's like most like Asian kids. We would just work at the family business because there was no babysitter, and they probably didn't trust us. So I was working at the age of 9 for them, and that's in my stand up comedy routine too. Most of my stand up is mostly biographical, and so I take everyone on a journey from when I was before I was born to now. Um, but my parents would tell me stories of how like my dad used to be in the army and in the Cambodian army, and he would before he escaped, he buried his guns with his best friend underneath a palm tree. And when we went back to visit, back in like '93 and 2001, I'd say, or 2002, he would show me where they would bury their guns and such. But it's much calmer now, and I in that time in '93, I believe, 2002 and 2006, I got to go to my parents' villages. I didn't want to stay in the capital because it was too rowdy and too dangerous. They said there's like motorcycle gangs and stuff. Um, but my dad's village and my mom's villages were called Tramka and Gao. And so from my mom's village, we had to ride a boat for like 2 hours. And I remember the first time I went there, I had like all these heat bumps on the back of my neck because I wasn't really prepared for that. I was like 9 years old or something, or 8 years old, something like that. And so that was pretty much my upbringing. It was definitely different. I still speak Khmer, which is the official language of Cambodia, with my parents. My dad prefers to speak English sometimes with me, but I talk Khmer with my mom mostly. Not much with my sister; she prefers English too. But Colorado was great, and I pretty much lived there until I finished college. My dad fired me when I was 18, but I moved back home because I wasn't an adult yet. And I remember that day quite well. But he was nice enough to buy me a Honda Accord though to get to work and stuff. So he wasn't really that mad. But I finally made peace and moved back home. And I worked at a hardware store because I didn't want to work for my parents anymore or my family. Because working with my sister was a pain. I'm not gonna lie, working with family is a pain because you can't get fired unless you're me. Can't get in trouble. You got to go in. And my dad convinced me to go to college when I was like 18. So I took a bumper year off because he goes, you either go to college or you work for me from bell to bell, open and close every single day. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I worked for you since I was 9. I don't really want to be stuck here for the rest of my life. So I went to a community college, and my first degree that I was going for was business management. But I got academic suspension from there because I wasn't much of a school person, and business management was not my cup of tea. I didn't like the math stuff, the supply and demand, statistics, all that stuff. I was just over math. And so I went to undeclared major, and I went to CSU Pueblo instead. and transferred all my credits. And it took me 7 years to graduate college. I just took a class here and there. Some classes weren't available and all that stuff. It all comes with the territory. Switched my major to mass comm because it was a screenwriting class. I was interested in making movies because I was writing short stories in my class instead of taking notes. And I guess that's what explains the 7 year thing too. That added to it. But school was cheap, and they have a really good mass comm program at CSU Pueblo, and I'm glad that I got my degree there. Um, and then shortly after, relationships fell apart and all that stuff, and I was like, I really want to get out of Colorado, Pueblo, and I decided. I got a Facebook message or MySpace message about a book called um, Mr. Be Gone by Clive Barker. And if for those out there that don't know who Clive Barker is, he's really responsible for movies like Hellraiser and Candyman and stuff. And my first experiences with horror movies was Hellraiser 2 and Candyman. I remembered seeing like the Skinless Julia from that movie, and she was and how bloody her suit was and stuff, her white suit was. And then I remember Candyman, how it scared me for like 6 years. And so straight slept with the light on, bathroom door open, showered with the door open and everything, just to make sure Candyman didn't get me. I better not say his name a couple more times or else he'll come get me. But so I wrote him a letter, an email, his website, and they forwarded it to Los Angeles, and I couldn't believe it. Because they reached back out to me, and they offered me, they told me to send my resume to them, and it just had my hardware store on there, and maybe the call center that I worked at too, and my restaurant experience. Nothing film work or nothing, or anything artistic for that matter. And so my family, well, my cousin, my parents, and myself and I guess we went and drove all the way from Colorado to LA to do the interview. And it was 4:30 p.m. Friday the 13th. It was June 13th, 2008, I believe it was. Perfect timing for a horror internship interview. And so I go to the studio that was his place, and then I ended up walking up to another house, and my parents, before that, I dropped them off at a park, the Beverly Hills Park. And so, to my surprise, Clive interviewed me himself, and he asked me 3 questions. He was like, so why do you want to do this? And I'm like, because I want to be just like you, like the movies, the comic books, the action figures, the everything. He's like, the whole shebang. I'm like, yeah, the whole shebang. And he goes, what do your parents think? And I'm like, well, my mom is behind, sad that I'm leaving and pursuing this, and my dad's 100% behind me. And he goes, did you come out here for business or pleasure? And I didn't know what his sense of humor was, and so I said both, because pleasure because I just went to Disneyland and Universal Studios, and business because I'm here with you. And he goes, I love you, kid, you're in. He goes, all you have to do is just write me every single week until you get here. And I promised him that, and I was so stoked. And I remembered how sweaty I was because it was like, I was dressed in dress clothes, and the weather didn't help because it was so sunny out there. But it was a relief to know that, and I was so excited. And I remembered on the way to the Beverly Hills Park, my dad said, one day you're gonna live out here in the hills. And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm not a fan of hills at all. But in Los Angeles was cool, but it's there's a lot going on, and I'd probably be lonely and tired every day. And sure enough, I was lonely and tired every day in 2009 when I became his official intern. But it was a cool experience. He tweeted about me like a month later that I was his intern. But I remember like the spring break before that ever started, I visited him, and he gave me some autograph pieces and stuff like that, and I have them in my closet. So when I move back home to Colorado, I'll hang them back up. But they were just a bunch of art work, which was like 13 pieces total. And we went to Comic-Con that year together, and went to his movie premiere called Book of Blood, and I went to a bunch of his autograph signings with him, and made sure he was good. And just running errands, picking up comic books, the whole nine for him. Um, and so I really enjoyed my 2009 summer there. And like the last week, I went to the Method Man, Redman, and Ghostface Killah show at the House of Blues on Sunset Strip, and it was a lot of fun. I remembered that week, that last Saturday, it was, I believe. I went and saw them guys, and I was dressed up Wu-Tang from head to toe. And so I went there, and they had a early show and a late show. And I went to I was first in line for the first show. And the House of Blues thought I was working for the Wu-Tang Clan, and the Wu-Tang Clan thought I was working for the House of Blues, because I was so early. I saw like RZA walk down the ramp, and Ghostface Killah walk down the ramp, and they all gave me nods, and they're like, "What's good?" I'm like, "I'm doing good," and I couldn't believe my eyes. They were just walking down from their tour bus or something like that. And I walked in, went to the show, stood against the barricade because I wanted the front row for the show. And afterwards, I went to the merch table, and Method Man's merch men were there, and they go, "You got some really old clothes," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know." It was like I was wearing my faded Method Man shirt, and it had holes like all along the sleeves, for my elbows, and like the ends of it were like torn. And I told them that I would buy all their merch, like one of each, and like bandanas, shirts, whatever they had. And they go, "You look like a huge fan of the guys since you're buying all this. You want to stay for the second show?" I'm like, I wish I could, but I don't have enough money. I just bought enough money for the first show. And they go, "Don't worry about it. We'll get you a VIP pass. Put it on your wrist, and just walk back in after everyone else gets back in for the late show." And I was just like blown away from their kindness. And we ended up, one of the merch guys and I talked outside and everything like that. It was pretty gnarly. And then after the show, I thanked them once again. And then, but before the end of the show, I was chilling upstairs on the balcony with and Cat Williams appears out of nowhere, the comedian, and he was throwing money off the balcony there, and he poured some Dom Perignon, and he offered some to me, and I declined because I don't drink. And then after the show, I thank the merch guys again, and thanks for the conversation and everything that they did for me that night, because they didn't have to, but they did, which is awesome. And so I was waiting for my car, and this guy named Armel shows up, and waiting for his car too. And he said how old my shirt was too, and I told him how they misspelled Albuquerque on the back, and he goes, "I know." And he goes, "What do you mean I know?" And he goes, "I'm Armel, one of Jizz's artists." And I'm like, "Get out of here," because it was like smoke and mirrors. Like everyone is just smoke and mirrors out there, pretty much, and almost everyone. And he goes, "What are you doing out here?" I'm like, "I'm just being an intern for Clive Barker. He did Hellraiser and stuff, Candyman, all that stuff." And he goes, "Yeah, I thought so, because you don't sound like you're from around California." And I'm like, "I'm not, from Colorado." And my car pulled up, and he goes, "Before he walked up to my window, and he said to roll down my window, and we exchanged numbers. And he goes, 'Keep in touch over the weekend.' And I'm like, 'All right.' So I'm a man of my word. And I reached out to him, and I was doing research for Clive out of Barnes & Noble in Palmdale. And I reached out to him because he reached out to me, and we ended up talking on the phone. And then I heard RZA's voice, which I was like, I couldn't believe it, because like he was there. I think it was like he was celebrating his birthday or something like that, or being a special guest. There was some kind of an occasion that night of the show. And so I ended up, they go, "We should meet up." And I'm like, "All right." So I invited him up to the studio on Wednesday, but they couldn't make it because of their schedule. And so I ended up going out to lunch with Ashley Lawrence and Clive's employees at the time. Ashley played Kirsty Cotton in the Hellraiser movies, and we went to Greenleaves with Clive's webmasters who forwarded my email in the first place. So thanks to them. If it wasn't for them, then I wouldn't have gotten the cool internship. But we were scheduled for RZA for Friday, and he brought Armel came up with him and his friend, and RZA's manager was there with us, and so we got to hang out for like 3 hours, and I took them on a tour. I spent time with RZA for the longest time, and his manager was hanging out with Clive's vice president at the time, and the rest of the entourage. And so I took when Riz and I hung out, I showed him like Clive's comic book collection in his library, and I showed him that Clive had some Wu-Tang comic books in his box, but I had Riz go get him, and I had the box open and everything, and the W section all ready to go. He goes, "That's respect." I'm like, "Yes, it's pretty awesome, you know." And he asked me about the Gravediggers, and I didn't know about the Gravediggers. I just knew about the Wu-Tang Clan because like my sister picked up the double album Wu-Tang Forever from Europe, and I became a huge fan instantly. Like that double LP is just absolutely amazing. And then of course I went back and listened to like the rest of the Wu-Tang albums and stuff like that. And then I took him on a tour, and they saw a painting, and his assistant thought it was a tongue, but on a painting, but it was actually a pecker. I always say pecker. And we all laughed, and I took him on a tour of the studio, and for a while, and I was bummed. I was text messaging Clive like wild. I'm like, I couldn't believe like RZA's here. You know, you got to meet him. He did the score for Kill Bill and stuff, and but Clive couldn't make it because we were all on an emotional roller coaster. I was like at the happiest, and he was at his saddest, and so RZA and everyone else just left, um, and so Clive walked over after that, and he just I saw him walking into the studio, and I was rearranging his library again, and because I like to like organize everything from his house to his studio and stuff, and he started crying, and I started crying, and we gave each other a big old hug, and he goes, "Come over to my place, and I got something for you," and I'm like, "All right, cool." So we go up to his bedroom, and he had this painting on his wall from a character from his young adults book series that's not quite out yet. And so he said, "You can pick this one. I'm giving you this painting." I'm like, "That's a nice gift, but that's amazing. I can't accept it." And he goes, "Fine, take the other one." And it was like some animal that had two different animals on each side of their body, um, and we said, "I can't take that one either." So we did a coin flip, and he said, "You're taking one of them." And so I said, "All right, heads for that one because it's just a head, and tails since that one has a tail." And so the original painting it was, and he had his butler at the time take down the painting and autograph it, and he gave it to me. And so he autographed it in the kitchen. We tried to take it off the frame, but it didn't come out because it was screwed in. He goes, "Fine, take the whole thing." And I'm like, "All right." He goes, "Just hang it up in your office when you come back." I'm like, "I'm coming back?" He goes, "Yeah, you're coming back." And I'm like, "All right, that works." So graduated college, and finally, and got a D in my final semester, and I felt like Tommy Callahan from Tommy Boy, or Tommy Callahan the Third, if you want to be specific. And I packed up I did my walk, promised my parents that I would for the graduation. And when I did graduate on that ramp, I raised my arms up and I yelled, "O'Doyle rules," because Chris Farley was in Billy Madison, and I thought, well, I want to pay homage to the O'Doyles because they didn't make it past. They all died in that movie, and none of them had a college scene. So I thought I'd be the next O'Doyle. So I packed my things up, moved out to LA by myself. It was a long, like 19-20 hour drive. And it was a lot of fun. And I ended up staying there for like another 3 years, maybe like out of all the months and stuff total, it was like 4 years total or something like that. I was his apprentice, and we had some more heart to heart talks and stuff like that. And um, it was quite an adventure. Um, Same stuff, picking up comic books, and all, running errands around town and stuff like that. Um, all that good stuff. Had a day job too, because LA is really expensive, and I didn't want um, any roommates, so I had to survive out there. Rent was like $9.95 for a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, which is way cheap now for like a place in Sherman Oaks, and that's where I lived. I lived on Burbank Boulevard between Cold Heart and not Cold Heart. That's his book, Cold Heart Canyon. Coldwater Canyon and Woodman around Greenbush, I believe. The cross street, Greenbush and Burbank. Um, and it was pretty nice, quiet. I was never home, and hardly had any guests over and stuff like that. Nobody knew where I lived at all. And I also, to keep my mind off being lonesome, I also was a concert journalist out there, and so I covered like all kinds of genres, local acts to like national headliners and famous world renowned people and stuff like that. Like I went to like all the venues on Sunset Strip. I was pretty much spending all my time on the Sunset Strip, because for some reason all my buddies at my day job were not morning people, because they would always party all the time after they got off work. So they left me doing all the morning shift, which I didn't mind because all my concerts took place at nighttime anyways. But my numbers were low. I would always get yelled at. I got transferred a couple times to different places and different stores, and paid the bills, but in the rent. Um, but I'm thankful for that to happen. But I ended up getting demoted and didn't do sales anymore, so that was good. But the pay was still the same. But the Sunset Strip was pretty awesome. Like seeing all those concerts, I did like 50 years of music in like a year. Meaning I got to see like the Doors play without Jim Morrison, of course, and UFO, and like every single band that was like from the 70s, or like select bands from this, or acts from the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and the 2010s, early 2010s. And it was gnarly. I got to see all that stuff. And I went to all the historic venues like the Viper Room, the House of Blues, the Key Club, the Rainbow, the Roxy, the Wiltern, Hollywood Bowl. You name it, I saw it there. And I just opened up the LA Weekly, and I got to just open up the concert section, who's coming in and all that stuff. And I made sure I reached out to their publicist 2 weeks in advance to cover their show, and some venues had a photo pit for me, some didn't. So, but those that did, I didn't have to worry about being the first to arrive and the last to leave, to get the perfect shots from the stage or on the stage, and it was awesome. And so I was tired of living out in LA, and because like the venues kept on closing in, and life wasn't, the grass wasn't greener anymore. I forgot to water the grass, I guess, and packed up my things, and I parted ways with Clive and all that stuff. And it was a sad day for sure. But when I got home, I did more journalism. I tried covering the big acts, but I had to go to Denver or Colorado Springs, and I didn't want to make that drive anymore. So I focused my attention on the local bands and the local comics, and I started a podcast called Pueblo's Independent Multimedia Podcast, and it's PIMP for short. I still wrote for that major publication that I was at the time, but they now folded, just like most publications. They just don't survive anymore. And all my articles went away, but I printed out some just to prove that I did cover the Doors, and I did cover Deftones and at the Palladium and stuff like that. Um, so I just focused on the locals, and I didn't have to worry about paying for parking anymore, which is great. And I always bought merch from the bands whenever they had merch, but they were always happy with their articles, and because it was like a local band on a national platform, and I wrote with like my heart and soul, and discovered my voice out there, and I channeled it all in the local scene. And I there was an open mic for stand up, and uh, and before I left LA, I forgot to mention I promised Clive's company that I would perform stand up for them, because they were like, you should try stand up, and I'm like, okay. So I went to a cafe with some of his staff, and I did like 5 minutes of stand up, and I was so nervous that I dressed up as my superhero alter ego, and Wu Manchu, like inspired by the Wu Tang Clan, because got to meet like half of the Wu Tang Clan out there, which was like RZA, Method Man, Inspector Deck, Capadonna, Raekwon, and it was awesome. I met Ghostface, but I forgot to get a photo with him at the Roxy and at the House of Blues too. But yeah, I did 5 minutes of stand up at that cafe. Um, Started to go off track for a little bit, but we'll go back to Pueblo in a little bit. And I switched clothes after my 5 minute set, and the host was like, "Where did that superhero go?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And his manager, and he goes, "Oh, you're pulling an Andy Kaufman on me," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I am." And so um, I left and did stand up local concert journalism in my hometown, and uh, I saw and I did just open mics. I wasn't on any shows while I was there, for the most part. And then I announced that I was moving to Florida to pursue stand up and journalism still. And I said I needed like three musical acts and three comedians. And I was hoping to move by Thanksgiving so I can spend Thanksgiving with my parents, because they were already down here and they were all waiting for me. But that didn't work out. Um, so I ended up tagging one member of each band and the comics that I interviewed, and they all said yes. We all want to be a part of this, and I'm like, I can't say no to everyone, so I booked everyone, and that one night event turned into a 3 day 3 night event, um, and it was everyone just we just partied for like a couple days, and it was pretty awesome. And then I waited 4 more months, because I didn't want to drive in the snow if there was snow. And I had my very first show on Singles Day, which is like February 15th, the following year, um, 2015. My first comedy show was my roast, and my first roaster was it was my friend Charlie, James, John, Mike, Sean, and my friend Patrick. We were all roasting each other like a classical form of like Don Rickles, which is on my YouTube channel too. If you look at my comedy videos on here, it's a good hour of just roasting each other. But it'll make you laugh from beginning to end. There's like 500 views or something like that, something or a little over. I don't know. It's been a while since I looked at the views. But I always watch it so I can reminisce about the good old days. But like James was a lead singer of a band that I found, discovered accidentally with journalism, because I said I went to the Guitar Center in town, and I said, do you guys know any shows that are happening tonight? Because I really got to cover a show, got to get it out of the house. And they're like, yeah, my band's playing at this place, at a restaurant and at a patio. And so I said, all right, I'll meet you guys down there. But they got rained out on, and we tried to hit up like a couple venues, but my friend next door had a venue, and he said, since it's short notice, I can't pay him, but we'll put out a tip jar. And they ended up playing there, and they ended up getting tips, which was great. And the lead singer James, he goes, can after the show, can you be our manager? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do as your manager. I don't have any experience at all, publicist wise, booking agent wise. That was just luck. Like, my friends just own this place. He goes, I don't care. We need a manager, and I think that you would be like the perfect one, because you just pull this out of thin air. I'm like, all right. So I ended up being their manager for like a couple months, and they ended up making like $1,500 in 22 shows, which is a lot of money considering them being local. And most local bands just pay for like get either play for free or for drinks or exposure and just merch money. And but I'm glad I got to be their manager because it taught me a lot. We ended up going on a West Coast tour, and we played at Republic of. They played at Republic of Pie, and they bussed on the streets of like the um, Hollywood Boulevard, with the Walk of Fame, and the Vegas Strip and such. And on the way back, they got pulled over, but we got pulled over. But it was interesting in Winslow, Arizona. Um, but like all great things, we fell apart. But I'm glad like James was my roaster for one last time, and he was bummed that I was moving to Florida. Um, and so I was bummed too, but I had to do something with get out of there. My parents were like, "You're running out of money. You gotta come live with us for a while until you can get back on your feet." And I'm like, "All right, I'll move to Florida." And so fortunately, like the festival stuck. Like everyone's looking forward to that every single year. So it's a tradition now, and we're going on 7 years, and it's like shining a light on everyone that plays original stuff. There's no cover bands, no tribute bands, no hack comics. It's just original, funny people, like amazing musicians. We just gather. It's free, couple days, and stuff, and everyone gets compensated. I save up like takes me an entire year to put this thing together, and take care of everyone because I'm doing it with or without sponsors, and it takes a lot of work, um, and a lot of pennies saved. So, but it's well worth it once everyone's happy and they get to perform and get new fans and make money and stuff. And I take my merch sales and I buy their merch and I give it away for free for the fans to get their works out there. So it works out for everyone. Um, I don't care to get any sponsors. Everything's, you know, I tried, but 1 year and it was a bad experience. So I said, I'm just going to do it myself. Um, and so that's how the festival happened. Let's see. I also did some short films before, after I got accepted to Clive's plays called The Narcoleptics, and then I made the sequel called The Insomniacs, and then I made a couple more, which is like The Misadventures of Wu Manchu and Where Are You, Wu Manchu, and the not so exciting conclusion to The Narcoleptics, and it's all on my YouTube channel. You can see all those horrible movies. But the first one, The Insomniacs, I ended up winning an award for, and accidentally. And so you'll see all the production notes on the bottom of that video. I won't go into full detail about all that stuff. And then in LA, we did The Misadventures of Wu Manchu, and all my buddies helped me film that. And we just took over Hollywood for my 30th birthday, and we shot a couple scenes of our time that we went and saw the midnight premiere of The Man with the Iron Fists. And I was like dressed up as Wu Manchu, and when I walked the doors to the movie, the crowd just went nuts, and there was just flash photography everywhere because I was all dressed up as a Wu-Tang superhero, and it was pretty awesome. And so they said you can't wear the mask because of recent events, and at the time they had like the Aurora shooting in the theater for The Dark Knight. I'm like, I totally understand. And the VP of Clive's company noticed this one guy, and his name is Dimitri, and he was like he was on like a producer on Jackass and Wild Boys and stuff, and so the guy asked for a photo with me, and so I said sure, and he goes, you know who that was? I'm like, nope. And then he told me that it was Dimitri, and I was like, well, that's pretty neat. And so that was pretty wild. But I'm bouncing all over the place because I'm just going with the flow. Sorry about that, guys. but yeah, I moved to Florida and I started doing comedy journalism and interviewing comedians and taking photos from them from the stage and attaching that photo to my website for their interviews and stuff like that. And they drew a lot of traffic to my website, and there's a lot of views. I got to interview like a bunch of famous comedians too as they toured through Florida, and stuff like that. So you'll see that on my website, or in my website and my YouTube channel and stuff. And I covered a couple shows, and my love for live music was just like, it's too hot to cover shows here. I'd much rather be at a dive bar and all that stuff. And perfected my craft, I'd say, and got like 30 minutes of material. Cut a album out here. And my pals said some nice things about me. And one cool thing was Joe Coy. I saw him at the Florida Theater. He said some nice things about me too. And that's on my press kit. We're just scrolling on the bottom. And so this is just a recap of everything that's on that press kit. You'll hear like my radio interviews, my podcast interviews, all that stuff. Just push play. And so I got to perform on the Orlando Improv stage, which was like my ultimate goal. And all that stuff. My last two performances in Orlando was there. I was honored, like blessed to be in the middle of Daytona, Orlando, and Jacksonville, and just have like an hour drive to each city or a little bit more, and just do stand up. And it was like an hour in every direction, and I had like 5 minutes of stage time, and some of the gigs paid and some of them didn't. But it was just me just learning my way around stand up. And sure, some people can take comedy classes, but it's just best if you just go on stage and tell jokes and work on your craft. And I miss that because of the pandemic at the current situation. So now I result to this, just interviewing comics and musicians of Sareth Fest and filmmakers on Saturday nights, and hopefully more Cambodians on Friday nights, and just trying to just let the time pass as I do these interview series. But other than that, that's like my story of the first episode of Angkor Baby, and my upbringing, and the story about my family and stuff. And I hope to, in the future, continue to interview more Cambodians, so that way even though we have like a checkered past, there's always a better tomorrow, like the Wu-Tang Clan says. And we'll do what we can with our time here, and be like productive folks in a new country, in a new world, in a new society. And I can't wait to like bring in more Cambodians and see what their experiences were like growing up and where they are today. And hopefully I interview a lot, because we are underrepresented, and not a lot of people know about us, and so anywhere I can shine the light on them, like I did for the music scene in Pueblo, and the comedians, and so hopefully something beautiful comes out of it. I don't expect another festival, because I tried to create more festivals, but I'd much rather have my music and comedy festival just the way it is in Pueblo. But speaking of festivals, I tried to create the Corazon Comedy Festival. A lot of folks flew in from out of town to perform there, and I got to raise funds for the Corazon, because they were hit by not Katrina, but two hurricanes, Irma and Matthew. And so it's my favorite theater in all of Florida, pretty much. And my storytelling room happens there from, it was born from that comedy festival, so not all was lost. And I get to help raise funds for them every month, until COVID hit, of course. And I'm trying to bring a 24-hour film festival there. We had to reschedule it because of COVID again, so hopefully we get to do that in August and have a screening in September, first week of September, weekend of September. And I'm hoping to move back to Pueblo, because Florida has been fun. But I need to go back home and just make a positive impact in my scene again, and help out with their booking process for like the local bands again. And venues closed and permanently sometimes before that, and it just reminded me of the Sunset Strip again, and hopefully I can be the middleman to help them get on stages again, because that's what I love to do, is helping people out, and seeing them express their arts on stage is just a dream come true. As for the future holds, that's what my plans are. Please follow me on all those socials that are on the bottom there, and subscribe to my channel if you were inspired by the story, or however you want to react to this. It's cool. Um, but I'm hoping to continue this for as long as I can, as to keep myself busy, and not get cabin fever. But I'm Sareth Ney. This has been Angkor Baby. I've been talking for 46 minutes straight, and it's been fun. It's been real and stuff. It's been real fun. I guess that's what they say. But I'm looking forward to interviewing more Cambodians for this channel, and shining a light on them, and help them out with press. And I'm Sareth Ney, and this has been Angkor Baby, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good night.